Welcome back to Surface Unscripted. Robin, are we humble or are we cocky? Do we just embrace what we are feeling? How have you been doing, brother?
How's it, Divan? Recovering from this weekend. What a weekend. We can be humble or we can give the viewers what they want and be a little bit cocky. After losing that Eden Park game last week, we had to take it on the chin, see all of the memes and comments on social media and all over the press. But now, not only did we rectify our mistakes, but we gave New Zealand the biggest beating that they've had in history at home. So we can be as cocky as we want.
Yes, and we'll speak about the game in a second. But people, if you follow Robin on social media, you would have seen, obviously, since the Boks won, it was a celebratory event. And Robin decided he's going to go out. And literally at probably 12:30, maybe 1, I see stories. I'm like, what is he posting now? Because this is probably a drunken guy. And you can be correct when I say this was a drunken guy. But it's a drunken guy jogging 5 kilometers for money. He left the club, put on his paddle shoes, not even proper techies, just put on the paddle shoes and started running. Absolutely crazy. Robin, do you want to explain to us what made you think my way of celebrating is going to be going to the club and then running a 5 kilometers in the middle of the night? Like, people sent in CCTV footage of you jogging in front of their house. Crazy. Post the clip, by the way, just the CCTV one of you going there.
Okay, I'll do it. Look, definitely part of my reasoning for running and thinking I could do it. I'll explain the context now, but it had to be the Boks winning. I feel like watching a morning game where we play our biggest rivals and we give them such a hiding, I think everyone in the country felt on top of the world. Divan, you could have played badminton, ice hockey, doesn't matter. You would have given it a shot. Why? Because the Boks just made you feel good. Made you feel like you can accomplish anything. No one really saw the scoreline coming. So, for them to do what they did, I felt super confident. All I had to do was run 5Ks in under 28 minutes. I have no running backgrounds. The last time I ran was probably in primary school. And I did it in 26 minutes after liters of beer. And I'm richer. So I completed the bet. And now I'm here to live and tell the tale. But I'm feeling sore. My body is sucked.
Got the Boks winning and you made money and you had a joyful evening. I mean, you can't really ask for more. People, if you're just like us, fans of the game, just talking a bit of shit when it comes to rugby, please do remember to hit that like and subscribe button. We do appreciate you guys joining us in on this journey. Now, Robin, as a Springbok, I've got a very snobby question to ask you. Would you prefer this game with the way that it played out and we won with the record, or with the Eden Park game? Would you have preferred us just getting over the line in the Eden Park one and taking that 51 game unbeaten streak?
Damn, that's a tough question, because let's just talk about what we spoke about. That team that Rassie selected now for the second test. We've been calling for some of these players to play. Obviously, Divan's favorite player, Damian Willemse, there on inside center, Kanan Moody outside center, Ethan Hooker on the wing. Like, these are players that are sort of taking the torch and sort of leading the way forward for that 2027 Rugby World Cup. So yes, the Eden Park game would have been amazing. We would have been the team that ended the streak. But then would we have had this game? If you had to choose between them, would we have had this game and been able to see the potential that some of these younger boys brought? Kanan Moody, second time at 13 against New Zealand. The last time we got the record, and now we've just broken it. So that tells you something, We'll get into the game, but in terms of from a Bok fan perspective, I'd probably choose the Eden Park just because of how historical it is, and that myself and you, Divan, we've never seen the Boks win at Eden Park in our lifetime, and our parents as well. So,
Well, you know what we haven't seen either, and this is my deciding factor: a record-breaking victory over the All Blacks. I'd rather put the record on them than have that Eden Park.
well, we got the last record.
Yeah, well, they've lost at Eden Park before, if I'm not mistaken, right? Just not since 1980 or whatever.
Yeah.
But we've never seen a scoreline like this on the All Blacks at their place. So we'll take it, right? And to be fair, I don't want to be disrespectful to New Zealand or whatever. Like I feel like they are the one team that, like, they're our biggest rival, but it's like a respectful rivalry in that sense. But I just thought we were absolutely outstanding in that game. There's no other ways to put it. And if you look at that first half, 10-7, I was not happy with that first half in terms of, I was very happy with the performance, but we just weren't clinical enough. And I sent that to you as a message. I was like, how can you have 75% territory, but have no points to show for it? And you see this over and over and over again. And still the All Blacks had one opportunity and they scored, and then they had a penalty. And then that's how they got the lead. But in the second half, the boys were firing. They were firing on all cylinders. And for all those people that are in our comments, when I say Damian Willems has to play and Ethan Hook has to play, and it's like, thank fuck you're not selecting the team. You're not Rassie. You're not a 2-time World Cup winning coach. Well, when I select the team, we put records on people. Right? And I'm not even an expert. By the way, I was just kidding. Right? But in the end, because apparently you can't have an opinion if you're not Rassie. Well, we had an opinion, and it worked out beautifully. The best player in the world, man of the match, Damian Willems. Ethan Hooker was absolutely sensational. The boys pitched up. But the one thing that I didn't like was after the game when they spoke to Rassie. Obviously, he was very excited and stuff, but he made a comment, and he said, those were just the boys that played this game. That's not what I want to hear. I don't want to see one-off performances. Like, you made the statement by selecting this team. You can't make that statement, have the biggest victory put on the All Blacks, and then drop them again and say, this was just the team that I picked for this game. No, can't. Unfortunately not how it works. I want to see this team play 3-4 games in a row with that backline firing like that. Even if they lose, whatever, they got to learn from the games. They got to build the chemistry, the combinations. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, it's a fragile position because if we had to take both teams that were selected without knowing the results of both games, majority of South Africans might have sided with that first Eden Park test, just based off of how many World Cup winners were in there, the experience, some of our best players. And I say it's fragile because we've got such a big squad. I've spoken about this before. We've got such a big squad because Rassie utilizes so many different players. And then we find ourselves in a position like, who actually is our best players? Or do we select a certain team against a certain international team, depending on how they play? So now we're in the predicament, like, we just beat the record. You would think that the whole of South Africa would be in one saying this should be the team going forward. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket science to understand that we just put in one of the best second half performances ever. But then you're also like, but are we doing justice to the boys that narrowly lost at Eden Park? Maybe it was just the wrong game plan. Maybe they just weren't ready. Maybe they didn't follow the game plan. Maybe there were some referee calls that disrupted some momentum. Not that we'll go into that. So I understand where Rassie's coming from. Like, that's the boys that we selected. But don't forget about who got us to the dance. Don't forget about the boys that, have put in the work to make us 2-time World Cup champions.
It's not about injustice to the guys that weren't there. It's about justice to the guys that were there. Like, how can you drop someone that puts in brilliant performances like that? If Ethan Hooker doesn't, for instance, play, I'd be like, what should he have done more? Like that's the thing, right? And in the end, I see a lot of comments, and maybe I'm being harsh, right? But it is what it is. I'm seeing a lot of comments and of people saying, yeah, now we beat the All Blacks by this score margin without Yebenetsepet, without Andre Pollard, without Damien De Linde, without Jesse Kriel. I'm like, well, yeah, but with them we lost. And in the end, we lost. Yes, was there maybe a couple of decisions or whatever? Yeah, but we said we're not going to blame a ref because you get that in every single game. Yes, were there mistakes in the game that they played or with the structure or whatever? Yes, stuff like that could obviously happen. But the boys that played this weekend, I just felt like this was the first time, and we've spoke about this before in a long time, that we've said we haven't seen a Springboks team play to their full potential. They played to their full potential this weekend. It felt like we had the stuff that we said we lacked for the past couple of games and stuff: fight, hunger, desire, courage to get over the line. That's what we saw this weekend. And yes, it's newer guys. Obviously, if you come to a World Cup final or whatever, you want the experience, right? And not the guys playing out of emotion. But at times like this, you need the guys that still has that emotion. I'm not saying the other guys that doesn't have the fight, but if you bring in younger guys that are fit and fiery and want to prove a point to play in the future, they're going to prove a point. And that's exactly what they did. There was a lot of guys that had critics on their back that played this weekend, and they stood up. So you got to reward them with another one. I'm not all of a sudden saying, oh, drop Damien De Linde, drop Jesse Kriel, drop Andre Pollard or whatever. But I'm just saying, play the guys a couple of games, give them a run of games, build their confidence. Because how would a guy feel playing a sensational game, putting a record on a team, and then kind of knowing, okay, well, I'm not in the pecking order really. The other guys are just going to come back, even though I didn't just do what they couldn't do. I broke records doing what they couldn't do. You get what I mean? I'm not even trying to be harsh. I'm trying to be fair to the guys that actually represented the jersey this weekend.
Yeah, 100%. Look, I'm also an advocate for rewarding players that put up their hand and put in solid performances. We could name a bunch of players in that starting lineup, basically all of them that really put in a hard shift, and that's why we came away victorious in the fashion that we did. It's just like a strange scale, right? Because on the 1 week we obviously lose the Eden Park game, completely different team with a couple boys that played in both tests, and then we go put on a record, and then it's like you got Argentina. What if Rassie selects the exact same team and we underperform? So everyone gets this hype, and that's what I don't like about South African, people that supporters and stuff. And it's so evident with Damian Willems's performance this weekend. He's had so many critics in the past. When he came on against Australia, when we lost, the amount of people that were talking shit, and then the next week the scale turns and he's man of the match. People don't understand that sometimes there will be a bit of an off period. So, Divan, if I'm siding with you in saying, reward the players, they just broke a record, reward them. We still have to give them the same respect if they do underperform, because otherwise it creates a false narrative in their head and their confidence drops. We're too quick. Yeah. And I'm not saying you, I'm saying other supporters and fans and, public opinion. We're too quick to jump on the bandwagon and disrespect players in the comments. But then when they're winning record-breaking, games and scoring tries and getting man of the match performances, remember what you said before.
Yeah, we've seen this multiple times, right? That's why before this week, you would know. We filmed together for the preview. I said, win or lose, even though we lose badly, you got to give them a little bit of a run. Don't take it too serious or anything. Because if you make a statement like this, you got to give them a proper opportunity to play them away from home against the best team in the world or number one ranked in the world. Like, what is your expectations really? And then you got to back them. That's so my stance would have been consistent because that was from the start. But we've seen this where people just flip around and after one bad game, Manie Libbok, the perfect example. When we went into the Rugby World Cup and there was no Andre Pollard, because remember Pollard came in later, people were raving about Manie. He obviously struggled with his kicking and everybody just put Manie in the dump, right? And he had a couple of off-form games as if He was not sensational for the Stormers and leading up with the Boks, leading into the World Cup. And now everyone loves Mani again. Instead of just backing the boy, you know the talent that's there. Right? Obviously, you get people that drop off like crazy. But you could see Mani's thing was a confidence and form thing. And now Rusty's backing him. He came and played this weekend. Sasha was great, by the way, until he had to go off. But then Mani came on. He was a general. Yes, maybe it was a couple of kicks that skewed off the side of the boot, yeah. But overall, he ran the back line. And we've said this a million times. In terms of attack, Mani is our best attacking fly-off. He fits the Tony Brown mold the best. And that's not even from an analytical point of view. Just watch the game and you can see it. He is so good in terms of running the back line. And yeah, the flip-flopping is annoying and everything. But in the end, we're just fans. It's emotion that kind of takes over. But for the boys, I'm so happy with the performance. Because, yes, obviously the scoreline reflects it's just a 40-minute performance. But it was actually a full 80. We just weren't clinical enough in that first half. But for instance, if you add the Cheslin Colby that got tackled over the try line and knocked the ball, that's an extra 7. In the first 2 minutes, we had a 5-meter line out where usually that's 5 points guaranteed for us. And if Andre's playing, 7 points guaranteed. Overthrew our line out once again, right? Or lost our line out once again. So let's say if you add those two, let's say we missed both kicks, that's an extra 10 points. All of a sudden,
right? In the beginning, where Reinach knocked it.
Yeah. You see, so that's a lot of extra points that we didn't take. And that's why I wasn't happy with the first half necessarily in terms of how clinical we were. But that was an 80-minute performance by the boys. And you could see the emotion and what it meant for the guys there at the end. So, yeah, I'm just back the boys all the way. What do you think? Obviously, you're not a Kiwi supporter, but what do you think from their perspective that does to their confidence going into like the Bledisloe, the final 2 weekends? Do you think it's an easier recovery for them in terms of just forgetting about it? Or do you think they kind of needed this to get them fired up once again for Australia, especially if you look at the way that Australia is performing?
Yeah, look, I'm glad you asked this because this goes back to what we were mentioning about critiques, the public and pundits. I've been seeing a lot of negativity coming, and obviously, when taking a beating, that's a given. You're going to have people asking questions, but in the same aspect, like they put in an amazing performance last week at Eden Park. I mean, I saw a couple people comment that no, the team's full of Barrett brothers. And I'm like, okay, but they were some of the best players in that Eden Park game. Geordie Barrett was putting in a shift this weekend, tackling Colby over the line, forcing a knock on. He was working around the park to make his tackles. So they mustn't be too quick to sell out their team. And I'm not saying that they would do that, but now's the time that they need you the most. They're still second in the world. They still have the ability to beat anyone on the day. Third. They still have the ability to beat anyone on the day, and I think it'll do them an injustice if the nation just drops them. We've seen what that can do to our Bok team in the past. Look, Australia will probably go in more confident now, knowing that they didn't lose to us with such a big margin. They got one over us and put quite a couple points on us as well. So, it's going to be a tough one to call. But yeah, if I could say anything to the New Zealand supporters, just back your boys and understand this is a process. They've also had multiple injuries at 9, and that's a pivotal position when you want to play a brand of rugby that suits New Zealand rugby. So yeah,
I think the pundits are way too harsh on New Zealand. I think they came up against a very good South African team that was hungry and kind of just outplayed them at all facets of the game, and they couldn't disrupt our game as well as they could at Eden Park. Like, I gave credit to New Zealand where it was due. They made that we can't play our game at Eden Park, and that's kind of what we did this time around in Wellington. This was one bad performance. Yes, they got hammered, right? If you look at the scoreline, it was kind of mostly in the last 15. The big embarrassing part of it is that it looked like the All Blacks gave up in that final 15 when there was still a lot to play for, because we didn't have the bonus points at that point. obviously they were still fighting for their 7-point bonus point. Like if they could have scored a try, they could have made it a 7-point game again, or a 14-point game, maybe get another one there at the end to get their bonus points. But in the end, it felt like they just gave up with that. So I understand the embarrassing perspective of that. But to just slate these guys just feels totally unfair. The same way that we never slated the Springboks after that loss against Australia. When you lose, you at some point you just got to give it to the other team. Do you remember when we lost to Australia that first game, and we spoke about it being an embarrassing performance because we were in front, because you put it in perspective. But I've heard some pundits and some people in the comments of New Zealand saying that was just an embarrassment to the jersey. I'm like, well, that just feels so harsh. And maybe that's hypocritical because I was just harsh on some of the other boys, but not to the point where I'm like, oh, well, they're embarrassing for losing against the All Blacks or anything. I mean, in the end, they didn't lose to Italy this weekend. They just got beat by a fired up Box team. Isn't it just as simple as that?
Yeah, you can understand the frustration from their point of view. Obviously, they're passionate just like us. Rugby is, such a big thing for them in their country, just as it is for us South Africans. So you can understand the frustrations. But yeah, it's putting, like you said, it's putting things into perspective. You're playing a Bok team that's hungry. It's got a lot of youngsters. Some guys coming back from injury. Got Siya Kolisi back at captain in his rightful position. It's very hard for me to see those sort of things because as rugby we want to be as positive as we can. So I would just say take this one on the chin. Understand that you played a formidable South African team this past weekend. I've watched the highlights so many times. Like the way we set up each individual try is textbook. It wasn't
No
fluke
midfield
tries.
lineouts.
Sorry?
No midfield lineouts and free
No
flowing
midfield
rugby.
lineouts. Basic physical rugby, getting over the game line. Jasper Wiese, what a gem. No headbutts this time. Getting us that front foot ball, bumping off Tokiyahu, bumping off, who was it? He bumped off like 3 players in that game. Like, when you win your physical dominance and your physical battles, rugby becomes a lot easier. And I think that's what we did in that second half. I don't think it was a lackluster performance by New Zealand. They just weren't winning that physical battle like they did in Eden Park. And we were just super clinical in that second half. That's why we scored so many tries.
The physicality in that game was absolutely crazy. Like 10 to 15 minutes in, like 3 or 4 HIAs and guys going off. It was brutal. And that is the great thing about rugby. That's what you sign up for, right? If there's injuries, it's part of the game. Right? You're not going to be a rugby player and say, oh, well, I'm never going to get injured. It's a physical game. It's a physical sport. And when there's physical battles like that, it makes it great. Right? It intensifies the game. Now, teams got to adjust to it. Do you remember that game that we played last season against Ireland when they toured here, that third game? And we were battled and bruised, and we were like 3 guys down in 8 minutes, or we had like 3 or 4 blood replacements within the first couple of minutes. Is it nice for your team? No. Is that like a disadvantage? Yes, but now you got to adjust. That's part of the game. That's what makes rugby great, when a team can adjust. That's why I think the World Cup final of 2023 was so special, and I give New Zealand so much credit for it, is they got the red card, but they were 10 times better when they got the red card because they adjusted their game plan, and we couldn't adjust with them. And that's why they kind of came back to the extent where they only lost by the 1 point and arguably could have won the World Cup final. Imagine if they won that with 14 players. It makes it great. Rugby is an adjustable game, so you can't. That's why I don't like this thing. Oh, we had an injury and that cost us the game in the end. That's the risk you take with a 6-2 split. It's calculated risk taking that you have to take. And in the end, it was a fiery game. It was physical. It felt like a rivalry that was going on there, and it was a beautiful watch. I think as a neutral, surely you enjoyed that performance as well, in terms of just the physicality and the nitty-grittiness of it.
Yeah, 100%. Saw lots of, so-called TikTokers doing their content, people from other nations, and a lot of them were sort of under the same umbrella in terms of that was one of the best second half performances from any team, let alone just the Boks. So it's good to see, because that means that, one, it was attractive, and number two, it was impressive because it was against a New Zealand team, and you don't see that, or you have never seen that. So, I mean, as a neutral, it must have been an exciting game to watch. I don't know how many of those neutrals wanted us to win, but I can bet you that they felt a bit differently about the Boks after that second half performance.
Yeah, and even just to go back to one of the previous points that we mentioned, like, it was a great performance, and I'm not saying play that exact team, for instance, for the next ones. Like, you can obviously play around a bit. Like Damian Dialinde, in my opinion, last week at Eden Park, he was great. Like, with Fussy out now, maybe you give Damian Willem, because even when Damian Willemse switched to fullback, he was on it. Maybe you go Damian Willemse at fullback, and then you slot in Damian Dialinde with Caden Moody at inside center. Like, small adjustments, but keep the bulk of what was working this weekend, keep that the same. Or, I know people will hate this, but if you want to go with Damian Dialinde at 12 again and bring in Willie Leroux, for instance, that would also be a nice thing, because I think Willie could have had a good game as well in that free-flowing backline with the attacking threat that he has, not necessarily individually, but the way that he reads the game, gets the backline going, and those type of things. So that you obviously can make decisions like that. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm just trying to be have justice on those guys. All right. Well, we've lost Robin. That brings us anyway to the end of it. We appreciate you guys, as always, for joining in on the discussion. Please do remember to leave your opinions in the comment section down below. We appreciate you guys for always joining in. Please remember to hit that like and subscribe button, and we will see you guys next time. Ciao.